I wanted to speak again tonight from Dogen's collection of Koans. Uh, as I've said, I kind of go through it page by page, and some things affect me, and some things don't. There's a kind of questioning that comes up when we approach texts like this, and what I find is that there are different kinds of not knowing, which is what I want to talk about tonight. And one version is where I read something and I'm just simply stumped, but not stumped in a way that makes me necessarily want to figure it out. I just feel like, I don't know. But then there are other times when we go through these texts and we encounter something, and instead of stopping, the not knowing makes us want to know more. And I read it and I think, oh, I don't know, but I want to know. So I want to talk about that tonight. And it's specifically about a koan that speaks to this. And the title is Huineng Doesn't Understand. This is case 59. Zen master Dajian Huineng of Mount Kaoshi was once asked by a monastic, who has a grasp of the significance of the fifth ancestor? Huineng said, those who understand the Buddhadharma have it. The monastic said, do you have it, master? Huineng said, no, I do not have it. The monastic said, how come you don't have it? Huineng said, because I don't understand the Buddhadharma. Now, this is a conversation that could happen today. It could happen just like this, but it's important that it happened the way that it did, because when the monastic goes to Huineng and says, who has a grasp of the significance of the fifth ancestor? The person he's talking to, Huineng, is the sixth ancestor. So there is an assumption here that if there is any person on earth who has this grasp of the fifth ancestor, it's Huineng. Because isn't that the point? Isn't that what transmission is? Isn't that what it means to be in this lineage? And there's a whole story. There's a whole story of the transmission. There's a whole story of the verification of Huineng, in which the fifth ancestor kind of recognizes him as someone who gets it and says, you're the one. So this monk goes to Huineng and says, who has a grasp of the fifth ancestor? And Huineng says, those who understand the Buddhadharma have it. Right? At this point, it probably sounds a little bit snobby, because the assumption, of course, again, the monk is thinking, well, you're the one with the grasp. And Huineng sounds like he's saying, well, those people who understand the Buddhadharma, we know what we know. But the monk he asks the important question. He says, do you have it? And maybe he's trying to understand what transmission is, right? There's something that this monk is trying to get to the heart of. So he says, do you have it? And Huineng says, no, I do not have it. And the monk asks, how come you don't have it? And Huineng says, because I don't understand the Buddhadharma. This koan for me speaks very powerfully to what it means to be a practitioner. of the way in a true sense. And I don't mean to say that in a way that establishes that there's a ranking system, but rather I think that we can understand within ourselves something about the sincerity that we bring to the practice, and it may vary over time. I think it's not uncommon that we come to this with a real earnest sincerity that perhaps also has no idea what it's all about and is trying to learn as much as possible, right? And maybe that's what the monk is doing. Maybe this monk is just trying to kind of ask every question that he can because he feels that if someone gives him the right answer, if he asks the right person, he'll get it. So we have that kind of earnestness. And then, if we do this for a little while, if we practice for a little while, if we read for a little while, we attend some retreats, we listen to some teachers, we start to feel like maybe, I kind of get what this is. I kind of know what this is. Maybe you're at a party and your friend says something stupid about what Zen is, and maybe you correct him, or maybe you just kind of smile to yourself and you're like, he doesn't get it. And we can stop there. But if we stop there, it's really boring. And probably if we stop there, we eventually stop the practice. Because that's not a very alive place to be. There's no place to go. I think what happens if we stay often is that we go back to that thing that we thought we understood the first time. 1 year later, 2 years later, 5 years later, whatever it is. And this time we don't understand it. Or we understand it in a completely different way. And we think, oh, right. Not, oh, now I get it, but rather, this is an evolution. I know now that I didn't get it before, and this feeling of getting it now probably is not true. And inch by inch, we start to enter into this thing that we call not knowing. Not simply as a place of ignorance, but as a stance, as something we kind of resign ourselves to. This monk, I think, was pretty sure that Huineng was going to accept his position as the person who gets the fifth ancestor. But Huineng said, no, the people who have a grasp of him are the people who understand the Buddhadharma. We can apply this to anything, right? Here we're talking about the fifth ancestor. We can take any teaching, right? We can take something that's relatively straightforward, like the Four Noble Truths. We can take something that's much less straightforward, like Dogen's conception of time. And ask, who gets that? And the response can be the same. The people who understand, the people who know, can answer the question as, I know. So if you ask then of one of them, what is the significance of the fifth ancestor? What is the significance of the Four Noble Truths? That person can say, well, let me tell you. And they can pull out the whiteboard and they can draw all the things. And they can say, see, this connects to this and connects to this. And this means this, and here's the etymology of this, and boom. Now you get it too. So the monk asks, well, do you get it? And Huineng says, no, because I don't understand the Buddhadharma. Because as I read this, for Huineng, the Buddhadharma is alive. The Buddhadharma is in motion. Buddhadharma is a question. It's not an answer. It's a challenge. There's no place to rest. There's no place to stop. And here we're talking about the Dharma. We're talking about this in terms of Buddhism and practice, but it applies to anything, right? Where we find this difference between the observer and the humble practitioner. The example that comes to mind for me first is something like parenting. How many people know a lot about parenting? A lot. And the fact is that if you pay attention, if you read books, if you watch the videos, there's a lot that you can know. It isn't that that knowledge isn't real. In fact, it's really useful. But I think very often when you ask the person who is in the thick of it, which is to say, the person who is parenting, and is doing that with open eyes, the answer from them is, no, I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm doing it, but I don't understand. Because it's real. It's not an idea. It's not a problem to solve. It's not a puzzle to put together. It's something else. There are some of you who have heard me talk a lot. And I want to say about a lot of things, but in fact, probably about just a few things. But you've heard me talk for hours and hours and hours. And I'm guessing that for those of you who have, that you have a felt sense when you listen to me that there's sometimes when I think I know what I'm saying, and there are other times when I don't know. And you probably don't frame it that way. You probably don't think, oh, this is one of those times where he thinks he knows. But I'll bet that when we bump into those things, and I do, I convince myself all the time of, well, I at least get this part. This part I know. When I start talking about that, I think it goes flat. It gets boring. It gets boring for you and it gets boring for me. Because why am I even talking about this? There's no problem to solve because I think I've already solved it. So in that moment, when I'm trying to explain that to you, all I'm really trying to do is solve it for you, which is meaningless. And I apologize for every time I've ever done it and every time I ever will. But there are other times when what you're watching me do is try to figure this out, and just holding the privilege of getting to try to figure it out with my mouth in front of all of you. I have the honor of getting to kind of chew on this in public, to get to say out loud, what if it's this? Maybe it's this. Let's try this on. And I think you can sense that too. Sometimes when I give a talk, I'm just giving a talk to myself. I'm trying to encourage myself. I'm trying to unpack something for myself. Because the not knowing feels alive. If we look at all the different areas of our lives, which parts feel alive? I'm going to guess that those aspects of our lives which feel most vital have this aspect of not knowing. That aspect of not knowing awakens our curiosity. It awakens in us that interest in looking further. And over time, maybe it also brings with it an understanding that no matter how long I look, no matter how deeply I search, I will never really know. That the intimacy of this relationship, whether it's with my partner or my child or my work or my art or the Dharma itself, the intimacy of that relationship is in the wondering, it's in the awe, it's in the question. In this very short koan, Huineng refutes everything that the monk is looking for, but he offers something that's bottomless if the monk can hear it. And unlike so many of these koans, we don't get to know. Right? We don't have the punchline. We don't have the moment where the monk has an awakening experience from hearing this. He might have been stumped. He might have gone back to his teacher and said, you know what? Huineng admits he doesn't even get it. But even if he did, he might have thought about it. He might have woken up a year later or 10 years later, remembering that conversation. And starting to get, for the first time, that getting it is not the point. Being able to articulate it is not the point. Being able to put the puzzle together is not the point. This intimacy is the point. I think I've given some version of this talk 50 times. And the reason for that is not because I want to drive it home, but because every time I come back to this question in my head, I get excited about it. Every time I come back to this question in my head, I realize how unmoored I feel in this thing that I've chosen to make so central in my life. Not in a scary way, but in a way that challenges all of it, right? To take up any aspect of the Dharma and to say, I don't get this, I don't know what this is for me, is to say, I don't know why I'm doing this. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why I'm doing this. But for today, I'm still okay with that. And I'll stop there.